My name is Renee Bass, and I have done my presentation on the theory of moral development by Lawrence Kohlberg. Lawrence Kohlberg lived from 1927 to 1987. Throughout the course of the last 2 decades, many students have been introduced to the work of Lawrence Kohlberg. His research was the first of its kind to foster a contemporary understanding of how individuals developed as moral beings. Whether or not we have had the opportunity to learn about Kohlberg's work, most of us have asked ourselves those fundamental questions about the ways we make decisions, particularly those decisions that cannot be linked to the reduction of a primary drive, or those decisions that do not reward us with tangible, easily recognizable reward. As human beings living in societies, many of us have struggled with the way decisions and policies are implemented in our justice system. Kohlberg's work aids both our understanding of the ways in which we as individuals make moral decisions and demands that we use a more discerning system to critique the systems of justice that are in place in our societies. Kohlberg was born in 1927 in Bronxville, New York. He was born into wealth. He displayed an early concern for the welfare of others by volunteering as a sailor in World War II and later working to smuggle Jews through the British blockade into Palestine. As a teenager, Kohlberg attended Phillips Academy, a very prestigious private prep school, and he later remarked that he had been better known for his mischief at Phillips rather than his scholarship. It was upon his graduation from Phillips, however, that Kohlberg first began to recognize his passion for the Zionist cause, and following his graduation he enlisted as an engineer on a carrier ship. Kohlberg and his compatriots were successful in smuggling Jews from Europe to Palestine by placing beds inside banana crates. This illustration of a theorist's personal choices in regard to a moral decision must surely have impacted his later work in the direction of his scholarship. Upon return from the war, Kohlberg enrolled at the University of Chicago, and he completed his bachelor's degree in psychology in just 1 year. Electing to pursue his doctoral education at Chicago, he focused his efforts on the moral development of children for his dissertation. Kohlberg's primary work was his development of stages of moral development. From 1958, upon the completion of his dissertation, and until 1968, Kohlberg taught at the University of Chicago. He was primarily affiliated with a committee on human development, cementing his identity as a developmental psychologist. In 1968, following his marriage and the birth of 2 children, Kohlberg accepted a position at Harvard University where he taught both education and social psychology, a true melding of his interest in psychology, moral development, and social justice. Kohlberg based his theory on interviews that he conducted in Chicago with 72 Caucasian male youths, largely lower and middle class. He later moved more diversity to his sample, including delinquents, females, younger children, and youth raised in other cultures. Each of the youth were asked to make a moral decision about the dilemma of Heinz. The Dilemma of Heinz is a story about a fictional and financially strapped man who must make a decision about stealing medication for his dying wife. And I want to share that story with you. The story goes, in Europe, a woman was near death from a special kind of cancer. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to make. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000, which is half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying, and he asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later, but the druggist said no. I discovered the drug, and I'm going to make money from it. So Hines got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. The question is, should the husband have done that? Rather than simply investigating a yes or no response from the youth that he questioned, Kohlberg was interested in the reasoning that the youth employed in making their decisions. It is upon his empirical observation of this reasoning that he based his theory, and he identified 6 stages of moral development. Kohlberg's doctoral dissertation made him a star among psychologists when he proposed his 6 stages of moral development. His theory consisted of 3 levels and 6 stages. Level 1 was pre-conventional morality. It was around the ages of 4 to 10. Moral value resides in a person's own needs and wants. Stage 1, obedience and punishment orientation. Individuals' moral judgment is motivated by a need to avoid punishment. Example, I do not say bad words because if I do, Mommy will get mad at me. Stage 2 was instrumental relativist orientation. Individuals' moral judgment is motivated by a need to satisfy own desires. Example of this, for a cookie, I will pick up my toys. Then we moved to level 2, which is the ages of 10 to 13, and this was conventional morality. Moral values reside in performing good or right roles, in maintaining the convention order, and in pleasing others. Stage 3 of this was good boy, nice girl. Orientation, individuals' moral judgment is motivated by a need to avoid rejection, disaffection, or disapproval from others. Example, I do not eat in class because my teacher does not like it. Stage 4, law and order orientation. Individuals' moral judgment is motivated by a need to not be criticized by a true authority figure. An example, I do not talk during a fire drill because that is one of the rules. And then in level 3, we have post-conventional morality, and this goes from adolescence on to adulthood. The moral values reside in principles separate from those who hold moral values in principles separate from those who enforce them, and apart from a person's identification with the enforcing group. Most people never reach this last level. I found that to be very ironic. Legalistic orientation, individuals' moral judgment is motivated by community respect for all, respecting social order and living under legally determined laws. An example is I pay taxes because it's the law. Stage 6 is universal ethical orientation. Individuals' moral judgment is motivated by one's own conscience. I pay taxes not because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do. It is upon his empirical observation of this reasoning that Kohlberg based his theory. He observed that young children felt they had no choice but to observe the rules handed down by a society and would almost universally say no to Hines stealing the drug. As children aged, Kohlberg noted that the youth recognized that they had additional choices. The youth began to make choices based on self-interest, and eventually, as they age, based on the interest of a moral society. Kohlberg's work began to view the child as a moral philosopher. The methods of research that Kohlberg employed earned him the due respect of psychology and education researchers alike. Sadly, it is Kohlberg's untimely end that is oft remembered, though it serves as a powerful reminder of how one individual makes moral decisions. In 1971, Kohlberg contracted a tropical disease while he was completing research in Belize. The effects of this disease included both physical pain and depression, which persisted for 16 years. On January the 19th in 1987, Kohlberg took a one-day leave of absence from the hospital where he was being treated for the illness. He drove himself to the coast and he drowned himself. It's very unclear whether or not January 19th was the official day of his death, but it is widely accepted that Dr. Kohlberg committed suicide. 1 year after they pulled Dr. Kohlberg's body from Boston Harbor, 600 people gathered at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and they declared April 15th as Lawrence Kohlberg Day. Thank you.